Let's see, I believe we're now streaming on Facebook. Yay! So hello. If you are joining me live, whether you are here with me or on Zoom or you are in the Facebook group, feel free to pop in with questions. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. I'm actually going to tag the group right now so that you guys can all find it. And then any questions, feel free to comment here. Beautiful. So without further ado, we're going to just dive in. So tonight we're talking about the dichotomy of emotions. And I'm really excited because this masterclass is probably going to feel a little different than my last couple. We're not going to have a ton of like visual aids. This is going to be you and me really connecting over how it feels to be in communication based on our human design and how our human design shows us how we show up, basically, how our emotions feel for us. So if you are catching me live, let me know if your emotional center is open or closed. If you need to look that up, if you're looking at your chart, it's the bottom like right triangle. If it's brown or colored in, it's going to be defined closed. If it's white or open, it's going to be, yeah, I know you're undefined just like I am. So if it's white, it's or it's open, that's open or undefined. So let me know if you know what your emotional center is in the comments below. So let's just dive in. So I'm really excited because I love communicating. It's funny that I've fallen into this space of just talking so much about communication because from a little girl, like I've always been talking, but what I didn't know until very recently was how much the way that I communicated was actually communicated through to other people was actually really affected by my emotions, how I felt, like how I was being pressurized by those around me. So when we're looking at the overarching not self theme of the emotional center, this is much more likely to really show up for open or undefined emotional centers. But what I have found to be true is that the not self themes of a center can show up for you even inside of being defined, even inside of your definition. And I find this to be true, just these not self themes and this, basically I'll dive into the not self theme of the emotional center. Whether you are defined or undefined, you can be conditioned. So the overarching theme of the emotional center is really fear of confrontation and fear of seeing the truth. I found through my own emotional intelligence journey that they're the same but different. Fear of confrontation can oftentimes be spurred on by the fear of seeing the truth, right? I'm afraid to see what's there, so I'm not even gonna have the conversation because I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to know what's like under there. Just not gonna mess with it. As a defined emotional center, the way that I see this show up the most often with my clients is the fear of seeing the truth. I don't want to feel my emotional wave because I'm afraid of what it's going to tell me. Oftentimes when I have a client that has an emotional authority, I find that they're great. They love the highs of their emotional wave. And we're going to look at emotional waves here in a minute. They love the highs of their emotional wave. When it comes to the lows, they're like, no, I don't. I'm not going to feel it. I'm not going to feel it. I'm not going to do it. I just don't want to mess with the low. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel melancholy. I don't want to feel low. So I'm going to just cut it off, not look at it. Fear of seeing the truth. So the overarching not self theme of the emotional center really creates a space for unhealthy communication habits. When I'm like, ooh, I don't want to say anything because I don't really want to know what they think, instead of just having clear communication or clear like processing through of your emotions, you're like, nope, nope, nope. I don't want to see what's under there. Just not going to look. I'm going to play video games and drink and do drugs and do all the things to avoid feeling my feelings. Now, I respect a good old fashioned, in fact. Cheers to Friday night. My husband made me one before I jumped on. But when it comes to emotional bypassing, we live in a world right now where we are constantly avoiding looking at our emotions by diving. I don't know, but I need to find out. Hi, Mitch. Yes, pull up your human design chart and tell me if when you're looking at it at the right, if that triangle is white or colored in. We live in a world where it is so simple to numb. It is so easy to numb out. Weed is becoming legalized everywhere. Netflix, we now have like all of Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, like all of the things, YouTube, anything to avoid actually processing and feeling through our feelings. We're on it, right? Like, let's go. But in our emotions and our processing of emotions is where we actually learn to have powerful groundedness and the ability to communicate from emotion and desire. And these are incredibly powerful places to communicate from, especially as women. That feminine energy is all about, right? Desire, emotion, that like flowiness, right? So the emotional center, the solar plexus center, I'm going to start with open because I intimately know what it feels like to have an open emotional center. And then we'll talk about closed and the emotional waves. And then we're going to dive into the dichotomy, right? So I'm very, very excited. The open emotional center, when it is open, feelings can feel really scary. Feelings can feel like, oh, can you say again which triangle I'm looking at? Oh, Nikki, okay. When you're looking at your chart, there's the head moving down on the right-hand side. When you're looking at it, it's a triangle. And it has an opposite triangle that looks exactly the same. The one on the right is your solar plexus center. And if it's colored in, it's defined. And if it's open, it's undefined. So with an open or undefined emotional center, emotions do not generate from within my physical body. I will explain. If I were to be marooned on an island away from all of the people ever, I would probably feel pretty like neutral all the time. I might get frustrated with like myself, like, oh, like I can't get a certain thing done or like, but I'm not going to have this constant like emotional wave coming up and coming down, right? I'm just going to be pretty like me, like kind of just bouncing along. I don't generate my own emotional wave. Now, if you're really into human design, every once in a while, if you have any gates, you can have emotional access because your solar plexus center might get defined through the lunar cycle every year, every month. But if you have a completely open emotional center, which I do, I just flatline. If I'm all by myself, I really kind of don't feel anything. Which, as I was growing up, I was in college, it really scared me. I numbed my way a lot of the ways through college. So I didn't want to deal with my spinning, racing mind. I didn't want to deal with my anxiety. I didn't want to deal with my frustration. And so I drank a lot. I partied a lot. And I remember I was laying on a friend's like bed and we were just talking and I had just broken up with my boyfriend. And I just adored him. And we had been together not really that long, but it was long distance. It was a mess. And I'm laying there and he's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're having like no feelings at all. And I was like, I know, like, there's just something like wrong with me. I'm like broken. I can't feel anything. He was like, if you are not able to feel the lows and like respect them, you're never going to get to feel the highs either. And that stuck with me because I never respected the dichotomy of my own access to emotions, my own access to emotional processing. And at the time, I didn't know that I was an open emotional center. I didn't really have my own emotional wave. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't respect my feelings at all. And so when we, as open emotional centers, feel feelings, we're not necessarily meant to dive into all of the things, right? Typically, when we dive into emotional intelligence work, we start with this like mindset processing of like going into, right, like, what are my feelings? What are they about? Where do they come from? And we start digging into like all of the things. Hello, Karen, it's good to see you. We start digging in and we start like pulling up all the emotions. Like, what is this? Doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. As an open emotional center, it's not that your emotions are not valid. It's just we can get taken so far off track by our emotions by doing all the digging. We're like, where's this coming from? And it's like, you might have just walked by an old lady who just lost her dog and is sad. And you're like, ooh. Then you're over here digging around. And you're like, what's going on? It's like looking for something that's not there. And so our processing as open emotional centers, our processing of emotion looks really different. We're here to really be a screen for emotions versus absorbing them all and taking them all on and figuring them all out. Which, going back to my story in high school, is what I early college is mostly what I did. I took on everyone else's everything until I absolutely broke. I completely broke down. I couldn't take it anymore and I went just completely flatline numb. I couldn't feel anything. This is mine, that makes so much sense. So Nikki has an open emotional center. So I was just like constantly feeling all of the feelings. I grew up in a household, everyone has emotional authorities in my house. My mom, my dad, my sister, completely open emotional center here. I'm always feeling all of the feelings. I finally was just like, I can't take this anymore. I can't feel any. If I feel one more thing, I'm gonna lose it. Because it was constantly like, what is wrong with me? Why am I having all of these feelings? What are they about? Where do they come from? I'm trying to figure it all out. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So our processing as open emotional centers, our processing of emotion looks really, really different. Oh my goodness, my nose is so itchy. Whew. We don't have to understand what it is or where it came from or why. It can be as simple as just acknowledging it. So as an open emotional center, when emotions come in for me, I go, that's interesting, because they energetically jostle me. So I'm hanging out here in my office, there's like nothing going on, and all of a sudden my husband's stomping by and he's about to get on the phone and he's like irritated, and I'm like, whoa, like jostled by his energetic emotional wave. He's an emotional authority. So instead of being like, oh, why is this happening? I can be like, that's an interesting feeling. What is that? I just call it labeling. I just label my emotions. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of frustrated. That feels like I'm irritated or like kind of angry. The other thing about open emotional centers is oftentimes we actually can't put like a word on the emotion because we're not actually like feeling it. It's like that kind of feels like vaguely like anger. I can't just be like, oh, I'm angry. I just kind of feel vaguely like irritated, frustrated, angry, right? So I notice it. I go, oh, I'm really frustrated. And if I actually hear my husband stomping, I'll be like, okay, that's okay. That's not mine to feel. I'm gonna let him go outside. And I like to like visualize, and I'm a pretty lazy visualizer. So I actually visualize the triangle from my like human design graph, and I visualize it and I just visualize it just emptying and becoming white again and completely clear. No one else has anything. And I just like take a couple of real grounding breaths, and I just energetically just picture that just draining out of my body. So I'm like, it's not mine to process or deal with. My puppy just ran headlong into my door. I wish I could turn my camera. She got her bones stuck under the door and is like trying to like dig it out. Oh my gosh. So as an open emotional center, we don't have to go digging for stuff. We don't need to like figure out what our emotional wave means, because we're oftentimes being jostled all day by other people's emotions. I used to get really nervous about doing any kind of energetic work or emotional work in groups, because you probably already said this with the emotional centers. Yes, solar plexus. So yeah, they're kind of interchangeable. Sorry. But because I would just be completely overcome by emotion. And I felt really uncomfortable because I was an easy crier. I would like sit in a group of people and people are like sharing their stories and I'm like over here like sobbing. And so I got very sensitive about who I spent my time around energetically. It was like, I'm so empathic, I can't do this. And so when it comes to the open emotional center, there's a couple of things that we can do. Oh, that's why my sacral crystal thing. Yeah, probably you're just like, release. So what we can do is we can clear energy once it's come into us. We can be on the lookout, like tingly, like, okay, what, like, oh, I'm feeling some vibes, right? We can also, if we know we're about to step into a conversation or an energetically, like emotionally charged, like event, I like to put like a little padding on my emotional center. And I literally, again, just picture my emotional center, my open emotional center, and I put like a bubble around it. And picture, it can be whatever color you want. Mine's typically like pink or like red. And it just kind of like, every time I breathe, it like pushes emotions off. It's kind of like a bubble. It just like, as I breathe, it opens and expands and just like pushes emotions off. Because if I'm in a situation where I just know I do not need to take on the emotions of other people, I'm not going to do it. On the other side of that, you can let emotions in. I use this with my clients. If I'm sitting across from a client and I can feel, I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling what they're feeling, right? I can tap into that. And I also say now that I cry for others. I oftentimes release tears and energetic emotion that other people can't. My husband's not a big crier, but I am. And when I know that that energy is like moving and I'm working with someone and I can release that for them, it's almost like me opening up the valve for them. I'm like, all right, just, I picture myself taking that on for them and just washing it away. And this all happens it's a very embodied process. And it takes a while to practice. So if you're new to practicing like just the energetics of emotion and getting grounded in your physical body, I would definitely practice just with protecting yourself, putting that bubble on first and seeing what happens. Once you notice you've taken on energy, clear it, let it be free. Like practice those little things first before you try like intentionally taking on other people's emotions and dive into that like kind of deeper practice of embodying your emotions. So the open emotional center, the open solar plexus center, it often can feel like I can't step into confrontation, right? When we're talking about in the realms of actually using this energy, besides like in my consulting and coaching with people, it's like this comes up a lot inside of communication. And I'll get to all the dichotomy of this in a minute. I'm so excited. but we're afraid. Emotional centers are like, I am so afraid to rock the boat. Open emotional centers, I am so afraid to rock the boat because if I do, they may have a feeling and I'm not gonna be able to handle it. I may be disappointed by what they say. I may be like devastated by what they say. I'm terrified of what's gonna happen. It might not work out, so I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm just not gonna say anything. We open emotional centers are the kings and queens of avoidance. Just not gonna do anything. I don't want to look at it. And or we are complete and total drama queens and kings because we're so terrified that we are not going to feel something, we make something happen. It's like, I haven't felt a feeling in a while. I'm going to go on Facebook and antagonize this person for no reason at all. And then you start this like Facebook like anger war and you're like, ha ha ha, rage. Like I'm finally feeling something. And it's like, otherwise you're just hanging out in your office, like not feeling anything. And it's like, what's wrong with me? Well, nothing's wrong with you. You just have an open emotional center. Pretty chill person. So you can either be the queen or king of avoidance or like a complete and total drama king. There's kind of like this two extremes to the open emotional center. They're like seeking emotional rushes. And then that like deep fear of confrontation because I don't know what's going to be there. And then the closed emotional center. So if you have a closed or colored in solar plexus center, you feel feelings in your physical body. They're called emotional waves. The reason why is they're on a track and your physical body is actually safe and capable and meant to process large amounts of emotion, like wide ranges, high, low, high, low. Everyone has their own emotional wave, and I'm not going to dive into the, my husband has an open emotional center. Yes, okay, I'm going to talk a lot about that dichotomy back and forth because Connor, my husband, has a defined emotional center, and I have an open one, and it's like, whew, this can cause some issues. I want to make sure I saw exactly what you said, though, because it cut off. Oh, confused, yeah. Okay, so the defined emotional center, I'm going to share my screen and show you the emotional waves. The picture's a little blurry, guys. I took it out of a book, and so it's like, it's not real good. But it's the best I've got right now. If I can share my screen, share screen. Sure. I hope you can see that. See, yeah, it's a little blurry. So we have the source of wave mechanics. This one, can you see my my cursor? Can you nod if you see my cursor? That like white little hand. You might not be able to. So we'll just start at the top. We have this, the channel of just all wave mechanics kind of have this overarching up, down, right? And then the tribal need. This is a tribal wave, it kind of ratchets up. It's like, and then it explodes. And it'll chill back out, and it'll ratchet back up, it'll chill back out. And then we have the individual passion. And this one's a little different. It kind of like pops up, and it's like extreme. It's just like flat line, wow, down, flat line, up, flat line. And it's kind of like you cruise along, and then all of a sudden you feel a feeling, right? It's not kind of on this like more gradual state. And I'm going to pull up another picture in a second. And then we have the abstract, where it's this just like shot up and then down, up and then down. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how those work. You guys see still? So see how the tribal ratchets up? It kind of comes up, it explodes, comes down. The individual kind of cruises along, up, down. So when we're looking at, when we're looking at the waves, it can be really empowering to know your partner's specific emotional wave, as well as like your own. If you're a defined emotional center, like know your own emotional wave, right? Because you're going to be able to sense it in a more powerful and meaningful way. So the tribal wave, it's very much driven by touch, physicality. My husband, I can feel when he's just like, I'm like, oh, he's gonna blow. So I can typically help by just going in and just like maybe giving him a little rub on the shoulder and just like, hey, I love you, give him a hug. Like he might be like rigid, like I want a hug, and it's like I can always feel him kind of like melt. He's like, I didn't want a hug, but I like, you need one. Stop, stand still, let me love you. And it's like this like physical touch can like calm that wave a little bit so that it doesn't just like explode out of nowhere. I've also seen this work really powerfully with like animals. Animals are very, very capable of feeling emotion. And if you can have like an emotional support animal come in and give you a hug, it's like the best thing ever, right? So then the individual waves. The individual waves is all about the individual. And it's about knowing when to like recluse yourself so that you can go inwards and really be with that wave, and when to go out and be out and like enjoy the high, right? Like it's like, oh, I'm feeling a high, tonight would be a good night to go out with my friends and like be in that. It's also a great time for creativity. You're like cruising up, you're like, wow, this is awesome, I'm gonna like paint today, because it's a fabulous time to like express yourself. So then the abstract peaks and crashes. This is a really, really important one to be aware of. The other two, you're gonna, I mean, you feel it, it'd be great to be aware of, but this one's incredible to be aware of because it's all about our desire and our expectations. When someone with an abstract wave goes into a situation, they oftentimes have very, very high expectations. You're like sitting across from someone on a first date and you're like, oh, I wonder what our babies are gonna look like. And then it doesn't work out because he never calls you back and you have this huge crash. You come up to Chris and you're like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. I can hear wedding bells. And then like, he doesn't call you back. And it's just like this crash of like devastated expectations just being shattered. And these emotional authorities tend to do this with everything and everyone. You throw your hat in a ring for a job application, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm gonna have this job, and you're dreaming of the corner office, and it's like so amazing, and then you don't get the job, and it's like this devastating crash. So these crashes can really be, I don't say fatal, but they're really difficult. Like they can feel really, really extreme. My sister has this emotional wave, and I've seen her do it again and again and again, and it's like she goes in and it's just, there's nothing stopping her. It's the most amazing thing in the world. And it's like, hold on a second. Oh, there it is. It didn't quite meet expectations. And it's not even just like, oh, it was kind of like what I thought. If it's not exactly like what you thought, like over the top, it's like, I might as well have just had nothing. It's just crash. It's done. And these crashes can be really, really like painful and feel really extreme. So the way to like abate this is by checking in on your expectation. It's by being in the race for the sake of the race versus the finish line. I'll use a little gamer nerd here. I'm not a gamer nerd, but my husband is, and he got me into this game. I don't even remember what it's called. I'd have to go look it up. It's not like World of Warcraft. It's something like that, where it's like it's its own world. And I'm like, oh, I really want to be like that top level. I really want to be level 80 so I can like do all the cool stuff. And he's like, honestly, this game is so much more about like the leveling process. Like being in each level and like experiencing it is where the magic is for this game. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I didn't really realize that. I'm like rushing for the finish line. And he's like, no, be in the process of the leveling up experience. And that's how I explain like the abstract peaks, to be able to avoid that like expectation. You're not just running for the finish line, you're in it for the experience. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and just see what happens, for the experience of having put my resume in and like stamping my name on something amazing and being like, I'm worthy of this position, right? Like I'm in it for the experience. Going on the date for the experience. It doesn't need to be like marriage at first sight. It can be just a date. It might be great. It might not be great. Like, but you just stamp the expectation on it and you're like, the expectation is I'm going to have an experience. Versus I'm going to fall madly in love and it's going to be great. So those are the different types of emotional waves. And then there's the wave that it's just the general wave mechanic. You're kind of always going to be in this like high and low. There's nothing super extreme about it. It just doesn't have as much of a like asterisk on it as like the peaks and valleys one does. So when it comes to the emotional authority, the defined emotional center, you feel your waves, right? I love that you guys are all like chatting up here. This is adorable. You guys feel your waves. And in those waves is where your answers are. It's where your peace is. And when I see defined emotional centers, emotional authorities, avoiding their emotions, it breaks my heart. Because in that high and in that low is where it's almost like having 20/20 vision, right? You go in, you have the high, you have the low, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that's what that was about. Got it. But when you do not allow the high or the low to happen, and you just try to like flatline or you try to like shove it down, you're like, nope, not dealing with that today. You miss the ability to look back, because then you look back and you're like, whoa, what happened? It's like real fuzzy back there. I don't know what my answer is. I don't know what's in alignment for me or not. And it oftentimes leads to an emotional, either complete shutdown, which can lead to depression, anxiety, like all of those feelings of like rattling emotions in our gut, which then can lead to like a complete shutdown of like, you're just like, I'm not gonna see anyone, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna like survival mode, or like these huge emotional explosions where it's like, oh, wow, I haven't heard from you in a long time. And all of a sudden you're just over here like ranting and raving. I'm like, ah, and it's like, okay. I call it the Cat 5 emotional hurricane. They come blowing through and it's like, wowie, you're having some feelings, because they haven't respected the high and the low. It doesn't have to be so extreme. The high and the low can just be, whoop, I'm high, whoop, I'm low. And it can be like, oh, I'm with it, I'm in it. I'm with my emotional wave. I'm in my emotional wave. It's not like, it's like people get on a roller coaster and they get to the top and they're like, oh God, no, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this. And it's like, no, you're already on it. So be in the experience of the emotional wave. And that means respecting the low. Like, hey, I'm not having such a good night. I'm not going to meet you guys tonight. I'm just going to hang with myself. Maybe have a little tea. It's also important to note that, again, you guys, I feel like the mindset trend has made it to where we're all trying to figure out what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and how to fix it. There's more often times than not nothing to fix and really nothing to be concerned about whatsoever. We're over here like, I'm having a feeling, I need to like figure out what it is. Even closed or defined emotional centers, you do not, thank you. You do not need to like sort out what the feeling is. Just be with it. You can still label it and just be like, huh, cool, I'm in my emotional wave, feeling a little melancholy tonight, I'm feeling a little low. I'm gonna be with that. I'm gonna give myself a little space. I'm gonna journal, I'm gonna go on a walk. And this is not the time to have an important conversation or to make an important decision. Riding your own wave is so incredibly important. The same way that open emotional authorities are able to kind of like process out without like taking on emotions, you're able to really project emotions. And this is cool because you can really, it's actually almost very dangerous. If you're in tune with your emotions enough, you can sit behind the screen or across from someone on a sales call and you can vibe exactly what they need to be feeling in order to be in a safe space to like buy from you, right? Please use that wisely. Asterisk, right? And of course you can't like force someone to feel an emotion, but if you're in your emotional low and you jump on a sales like or a clarity call with someone, they're like, ooh, something's off, right? This doesn't feel good. There will be no clarity, right? Exactly. They'll be like, what? You don't feel right because you're in your low. So paying attention to your highs and your lows allows you to really like be respectful of what you're capable of projecting out. That also means that you cannot project out, right? If you can project something out, you can not do that too. This is the epitome of emotional intelligence. I almost have it easy as an open emotional center, and I don't say that lightly because being an open emotional center can be a roller coaster, but you guys, when you really get your wave, you can be the epitome of emotional intelligence. Because the choice to not project your emotions onto other people is this deep, it's like this like wall that you kind of put up. It's like, this is not theirs to handle. And Maria, I know that you're doing Ria's doing a class right now with Eden Carpenter, who I know is an emotional authority. And I watched her for a while before I knew that, and I feel like I could have probably picked up on it, but if I didn't know, I probably wouldn't know, because she talks about it so readily that now I'm like, oh, of course, I see her talking about it. But if I didn't know, I probably would have gone back and forth on like, is she an emotional authority or is she an open emotional center? Because she doesn't project out her emotions. She so deeply respects her emotional wave. So if you want to go watch a really aligned emotional authority in action, definitely go check out Eden Carpenter. She's amazing. And Elisa Canali. She's an emotional authority, if I'm not mistaken. Deeply respectful of her wave. Right? Yeah, we're super attracted to our opposites, right? I need your emotional groundedness. Just when you're Elisa Canali and Eden Carpenter, deeply aligned emotional authorities, and they are emotional intelligence just embodied. Because I don't know when they're in a wave. Unless they say like, hey, I'm taking the afternoon off to like be with myself. It's like, they don't project that onto me, right? They don't project that onto me on calls. They don't have to like, they don't push that out into the like world of those around them. Now, of course, I don't live with Eden. I live with my emotional projector. And so it's like, you're in it more and you can sense it and feel it a little bit more. But when it comes to like really like communicating from a grounded place and not putting your emotions on and letting it like color everything, it's a practice, right? And so for you, defined emotional centers is this twofold. Knowing yourself, knowing your wave, which is the biggest thing to do. Because if you're in a deep low, the last thing you should be doing is having an important conversation with your partner. Like, it's not going to feel good for you. It's not going to feel good for them. The other thing is guarding your wave. Not putting yourself in a space where you're going to have to like be doing something in a low, like a important conversation with your partner, or like even just like I've seen Elisa shift masterclass times where she's like, nope, do the masterclass in the morning. I'm having a low. So being able to just be like, okay, I'm respecting that. Because if you're an emotional authority, like it or not, your emotions run your life. And then third, being able to like kind of put up that wall and not pushing out like emotionally like wah, all over people, emotionally vomiting or emotionally bludgeoning people with your feelings. It's about 50% of the population. 50% is defined, 50% is open. So pretty good chances are you're talking to someone with an open emotional center, and we're over here like melting because you're like, oh, I don't know. All of the feelings. So how to use this in communication. When we're looking at communicating, and I love playing with this because it's really, really cool. If you're an open emotional center, talking to an open emotional center, likelihood is you can go on for days and days and days and never have an emotion come between you. Because there's no emotions happening. There's no emotional wave coming up to me. There's no emotional wave going out. These are very simple places to have conversation. Obviously, there's still communication like from emotion that can happen inside of two emotional centers, open emotional centers talking. But then when you're talking about an open emotional center that is closed, speaking to an open emotional center. So defined and then undefined. So I'll just be like open, closed. This is a place where I feel like relationships fall apart. So I'm over here, I'm an open emotional center. I'm hunky-dory. And then I sit down, I'm like, hey, partner. Howdy, partner, I need to talk to you. And they're like, they don't know, they're in their low, and they're like, fine. I'm like, I have things to say, and they're like, holy moly, what just happened? I'm feeling angry and frustrated, and I'm feeling all of the things. And when an open emotional center starts feeling feelings, we literally have no physical place to process them in our physical bodies. Defined emotional centers, you guys are set. You have the physical capacity to handle emotion. We don't. We're like, ah! We start spouting off. We either get angry and we start getting snippy and we're like, ah! Or we start crying. We're like, oh. And we just start feeling all the feelings. And then we have no idea what the heck just happened because it's not ours. We're like, where did all this come from? I wasn't angry when I came in here. Now we're like, what happened? Where'd it go? Where did this happen? So as an open emotional center, coming into a conversation with a closed emotional center, we can just be really aware. We have to be aware of the other. If you're a closed emotional center, you're defined, you're going to want to pay attention. Am I in my wave? It may be smart to just say, hey, you know what? Right now is not the best time to talk about this. Can we talk about this, tomorrow? And if you need to go so far, it's like, hey, like I'm just emotionally, I'm not in a space to communicate about this. I need a little space. And then the open emotional center coming into a conversation with the defined emotional center, right? We need to be willing to just, I almost call it the ice queen, but it's not, it doesn't have to be icy. It can be warm. It's a communication queen, right? You step in and you're like, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. It doesn't affect me. It's not for me to take on. It's not for me to process. And I need to be able to come and share with you what I need to say. So I'm not going to get derailed by your little like feelings. And it sounds so silly and it's kind of like can sound kind of demeaning, but it's like I kind of put up this wall of like, I'm not taking on your shit right now. I'm over here. I've processed what I need to say. I'm here to communicate it to you. And if it's not a good time, let me know. I'm not here to process all of your stuff for you. I sound a little bitchy, but it's like, not here for it. We put up that wall. And then there's the two closed centers, which again is kind of like two open centers. Talking is like the emotions are typically not going to get, unless they're like really unhealthy and someone like explodes, like someone's has ratcheted up all the way and their tribal wave has just exploded. It's like they're both going to be feeling their own feelings. I'm feeling my feelings. I'm feeling my feelings. I'm feeling my feelings. I'm feeling my feelings. They're not really like onto each other. So, does anyone have specific questions? Yeah, does anyone have specific questions? And just unmute, you can unmute yourself. No one? That's fine. Oh, Karen, yay, hey!
Hi. Check out my gorgeous little ring.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
is it me or is it you?
No,
you're unmuted.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Oh no, that's
oh. Hi. Oh, now I changed my connection. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you for this gorgeous little ring.
Oh yeah.
I just I think I need to understand better how I can be more aware when I'm in that dip, that low, because I think I'm that that one. The abstract?
If I remember correctly, I think you are.
That really resonated with me when you were describing it, and when I saw the wave, when I actually saw the graphic of it, I was like,
really? Oh yeah, that's me. Can you pull up your chart and I'll confirm that with you?
Yeah. You want me to? I'll show it to you on my phone.
So the collective desire is, you'll see, and this is all going to be on the solar plexus, is you'll see 41 connected to 30.
Oh, so it's 55 connected to 39. I'll show you.
That's the individual passion wave. Is there another one?
Well, it's a partial connected between 59 and 6, and a partial connect between 36 and 35.
I'm curious about your partners. If he has 35 connected, you might have that more like ability to connect to that other wave that we were talking about.
I can pull it up.
If he has 35, the gate, because you have 36.
Yeah.
So that's like, yeah. That's
so again, his is open. He's got a partial 36 to 56 in red and a partial 55 to 39 in black.
Yeah, so I don't think that completes that wave for you. So you have the individual passion wave. In your physical body, you have the individual passion wave. So that's the one where it's very sudden. It's like, and so the suddenness that you're feeling is probably your low to start coming in. And it's like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of cruising along and then all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't take much. It's interesting. And I've never thought of myself as a moody or irritable person, but I think definitely when I'm run down and tired, when I'm not getting the personal nourishment that I need, I am way more prone to that sort of situation. So,
twofold, whether you're open or you're closed, pay attention to your energy types, not self-theme. You're a manifesting generator. That not self-theme is frustration, right?
Yep.
So if you go to your chart, look at your not self-theme of your type, right? If you're a projector, it's bitterness. If you're a manifestor, it's anger. Reflectors, disappointment, right? So I notice, even as an open emotional center, I can get frustrated really easily. That's frustration. That's my whole being out of alignment. Yeah. Not just my emotional wave. I don't have an emotional wave.
Right.
Well, I sure as hell can get frustrated.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if you're out of alignment in other parts of your decision making, that frustration can come on just all of a sudden, and you're like, ah!
So it's like the kryptonite.
Exactly. It's that's your cue that something's out of alignment. I've made some unaligned decisions lately. that are starting to add up and don't feel good?
I think I tend to feel kind of like victimized by it. Like I feel like I'm not getting enough sleep because the children are keeping me awake, or I don't get enough time to myself during the day because the kids need my attention. Like, I've got 3 little ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
frustration, right? And it doesn't feel like, and so the victimization comes from, I'm not getting what I need.
Yeah.
And so you're a mom, so that's not always like, you can't always just like shove all your kids in a closet and just like go take a bath. But what can you do to alleviate some of that pressure? Could it mean for your sanity? And I don't know if anyone's out there who would do this. I know, especially with the weather and COVID and all the things, but if someone, when I was in college, would have asked me to just come over and take care of their kids for 1 hour, I would have been like, whoop, I'll do it between classes. I'd like go make $15, go grab myself a Sammy and go back to college, right? Like, cool, an hour and a half. Can you come over for an hour and a half? I'll spot you a 20. Right? I'll just give you $20, watch the kids for an hour and a half. Once a week. You know what I mean? Could you make space? Because it sounds like you feel like you're just like, I'm not, and in that space, can you be intentional? I'm going to use an example because this exact thing just happened between my partner and I this week.
Okay.
It was getting to the point where it was like, I felt like everything was landing on me again. Our dishwasher has been broken, all of the things broke in our house. So it's like, I'm doing all the dishes, I'm doing the laundry, I'm picking up all the clothes, his coats are everywhere, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not a maid. And I could have said that. Hey, brat, I ain't your mom. Pick yourself up. I said, wow, why am I feeling so frustrated? Because I haven't had time to go sit in my office for 15 minutes because I've been too busy like trying to like keep the house from falling apart around us. I've been on puppy patrol, I've been doing all the things. Of course, I don't have kids, but it's like all the errand running and like we're preparing to go out of town for a holiday again. And it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten any of my work done. So I said, hey, you know what? It doesn't feel good to me when I feel like I'm stuck being like the housekeeper when we both live here equally. And it would feel really good to me for you to support me in maybe like putting your own coats away or like folding your laundry. Would you be willing to do that? And I'm going to get into specific verbiage here in a minute. Hey, partner, would it be okay if once a week I had a nanny come over so that I could take a hot shower, an intentional hot shower with essential oils and a scrub, and you really actually go in and you take care of yourself without thinking like, oh, there's the baby screaming. Or the like phantom, like, oh, I think I hear maybe the baby screaming, and then you jump out and you're like half in a thought and like you're like being pulled in all the different directions. Because as a mom, more than anything, your energy runs the household. And you probably notice your emotions are all over the place. Time yourself for 10. You can shove you in a closet, that's funny. Your emotions are all over the place. Are your kids' emotions all over the place?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
You're frustrated. You're irritable. Are your kids falling apart? Like, notice.
Yeah, my kids are my 2 boys are emotional authorities too. So I think there's some like.
They're probably feeling all their own emotions, but when we're frustrated and we're falling apart, kids and dogs, cats don't care, but they feel it. They just feel it. They're like, oh, what's going on? Mom's freaking out. So this is the perfect time for me to try to paint my brother's toes on the white carpet. Like, it's like they know. Push every button I can right now. Especially because you have young boys in the house, right? So when it comes to your emotions, pay attention to what's an emotion and what's a not self-theme of your alignment. You're like, oh, I'm out of alignment. It's not that I'm sad or melancholy. Those are emotions, right? And frustrated can be an emotion. But if you notice that you're a generator and you're feeling frustrated, I think about my dad whenever tech stuff happened in our house. It's like, why doesn't this work? And it's like, it's not even anger. It's just, you can tell he's just like, just frustrated. And it's like, out of alignment generator. There you are, spinning their wheels, trying to make stuff happen, and they're just irritable. And that frustration starts to compound until you blow, right?
Exactly.
So how can you ask for what you need? And then as a defined emotional center, pay close attention to your waves. What's the feedback that you're receiving from your waves? And my emotional center clients, I have them track their emotional wave. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Just check in with yourself like 4 times a day. Set an alarm on your phone. You have a little notebook. I have this like really cute little notebook. When I get really frustrated about something that I need to like energetically release, if I don't have the time to like do it right that second, I'll like jot it down. So you can do something like this. Once a day, check in with yourself in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, right? Or maybe a couple times throughout the afternoon, like, hey, where am I at? It doesn't have to be complicated. You're like, I'm at a +10 happy, I'm excited, I'm exuberant. Then that evening, you're like a -10. You're like, oh, wow, there's my wave. So you can start to see, does my wave take 2 hours to process through? Does it take a couple days? You can kind of start to see like, oh, you're like looking back, you're like, oh, wow, I've been kind of at that like 0 point for a little while. This might be a good time to like look back at what my emotional waves have taught me over the last couple days and see what decisions I can be like moving on. So pay attention to your emotional waves. As an open emotional center, like I said, you're going to be paying attention more to that, like, I'm frustrated, right? Or just noting when waves are coming into you. I'm the type of person that's in a grocery store and someone walks by me and I'm all of a sudden choked up. Why am I choked up? Why am I crying? Who knows? That granny might have just lost her puppy. I have no idea. Like, and I'm over here like, I'm just all of a sudden feeling feelings. And my husband's like, what is wrong with you? I now notice, I'm like, oh, there's a feeling. Cool. Good to see you. And off I go. For the defined emotional center, you need to be more like, okay, there's that feeling. What is it telling me? Is it time to move? Is it time not to move? Does anyone else have any specific questions? Oh, I'm getting comments on my thing. Perfect. If not, I'm going to quickly, before it gets too much later, dive into specifics of verbiage. And I love this because I'm very excited. It spells rain, R-E-I-G-N. Like rain, like a communication queen, right? When we go into a conversation, specifically, hey, I'm looking at you, open emotional centers, it can be really scary. Even small conversations, like we're big chickens, we get real nervous. Yeah, oh, like a queen, yeah, rain. So what I recommend for all open to find, before you go into a communication more than just like, hey partner, could you grab some milk at the store? And even then you can use really direct verbiage and be like, hey, it would be really helpful if you could grab milk at the store. Would you be willing to do that? And get it like clear, yes or no. You're asking exactly for what you need or what you want. Versus like, hey, we need milk at the store, as they're running out the door. And they're like, okay. They don't come back with milk. It's like, hey, we need milk at the store. Would you be willing to grab milk at the store? Eye contact, yes, no. Yes, I can. Much more likely to get milk. I'm not promising you're gonna get milk, but you're much more likely to get milk. Pay attention to going into a communication ungrounded. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that you need to be like standing on your feet and be like, oh, grounded, like rooted, but ungrounded in knowing what the hell you're going to talk about or how the heck you're feeling. We go into communications, it's like, I need to talk to her. I give her a talking to. Okay, what are you going to talk to her about? Your best friend hurt your feelings. What are you going to talk to her about? I can't believe you did that. Well, how's that going for you? How are you feeling about the situation? Have you felt through the situation? Do you actually know what happened? Have you taken a chance to look back on it and actually look at it? Like, I always recommend getting a bird's eye perspective. Like, I'm going to use this situation, right? Like, your best friend told something that you had shared with her in confidence to a couple other people. It's not like the end of the world, but you kind of feel like slighted by the fact that like she shared a secret without. So like, I shared that in confidence. Like, I didn't want other people to know that. So this is my example. I'm going to go back to it a few times, right? So what happened? Were you clear when you communicated that you were communicating to her in confidence? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. How do you feel about it? Do you feel like she stabbed you in the back? Do you feel just like sad? Do you feel like you just can't trust her anymore? Like, how do you feel about the situation? And then can I share with her really how I'm feeling without blaming, without putting anything on her, and while taking full responsibility myself? And once you're able to be like, yep, I've looked at it, I know what I'm feeling, and yes, I can have the conversation without like bludgeoning her with my vibes and my feelings. And I'm not gonna like blame her, and I really am at a place where it's like, okay, like, I call it empathy for the situation. The people, not every situation is gonna go perfectly. Sometimes shit hits the fan. It's like, all right, she had a bad day, she let it slip, like, it just, whatever. Can I have empathy for the situation and not come in like raging? I'm so mad at you, I can't believe you did this. Hey, it happened, got it. It's not necessarily even that you need to have gotten to forgiveness, but just like some empathy for the fact that like mistakes were made, right? So, Rain. Just recant what's good. Like, go back over what's good. What's good that happened or that came out of it? And I'm going to give you a specific example in a second. E, express the ideal scenario. I, issues. What are the issues with this? What's the problem inside of what happened? G, gain the best for both. And I'll type this up, Karen, and I will put it in the replay notes. So that'll be in the design hive. That'll not go out in the emails probably. G, gain the best for both. And then N, never ever leave without asking for what you want or need. So recant what is good, right? Like, hey, you and I have been friends a really, really long time, and I love you. And I'm so glad that like we're able to get together and like spend some time together right now. Like, that's good, right? Just look for the bright, like, where's the silver lining, right? You're not coming in hot with like, all right, B, I can't believe you did that. You're just like, hey, like, I'm glad that we're able to sit down together right now. Like, this means a lot to me that you're willing to like have this conversation. I love you, whatever. You share that good thing. And if you can't share a good thing when you start the conversation, you maybe think a little bit harder about the empathy part before you jump into the conversation. Come to that place of like neutralness. You're not in it to attack, you're in it to just win-win. There's nothing in it for me, there's nothing in it for you until we hash this all the way out, right? So recant what is good. And I'm hoping that recant means exactly what I think it means, because now I'm saying it out loud and I think that it doesn't. It means like turn down. Review. We'll use review. R. Review what is good. Go back over what's good. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Review what is good. Recant actually means say that one no longer holds an opinion or belief, especially one considered heretical, which is interesting for like Rain, thinking of like a tyrant people are committing treason against. Recant that right now. So recount. Thank you, Karen. I was like, I didn't write recant. It does, it says recount, but I like review better. Like, go over what's good, right? Sorry. Thanks, guys. What's good? And then review or express the ideal scenario, E. Recall, review, perfect. Thanks, guys. Express the ideal scenario, right? So like, count what is good. You're kind of going to go into like, hey, what happened? You're like, hey, like, you know, in the future, I really want to be able to trust you with my deepest, darkest secrets, right? In the future, I want to be able to 100%, 1000% be able to trust you with my deepest, darkest secrets. But here's the issue. You just told Sarah and Sally something that I shared with you in confidence, right? And that for me feels like I can't trust you anymore. And that hurts. It doesn't feel good. Because I thought I could trust you, and then this happened, and they may interject at this point and be like, well, what happened? Blah, blah. Be sure that no matter what happens through the issues part, this is going to be the part where like, she's going to come in with her stuff. You're staying emotionally grounded, right? You're not going to start bludgeoning her with your emotions to find emotional center, and you're not going to start melting open emotional centers. You're not like, ah! It's like, no. Let me know. What are your feelings? Did I get this completely wrong? And be willing to be wrong. If the issue comes up and then all of a sudden you're presented with new information, it's like, oh, good. Didn't know that. And either way, you can still move into gain the best for both. Hey, in the future, I want to be able to share this with you. But right now I'm feeling like I can't trust you because Sarah and Sally now know my deepest, darkest secret. But in the future, I want to be able to share with you. So what would be best for both of us? Like in the future, would you benefit, or would it be better if I were to tell you specifically, like, please do not tell this person, so you have a clear understanding of like that this is just between you and me. Because then you'll know and I'll know that we're good and we communicated clearly. Right? In the future, I will let you know more clearly that this is just between you and me. She's safe, you're safe, you both feel safe in your relationship now. Hey, no harm, no foul. They now know that I suck my thumb in my sleep. No big deal. Just a kind of a bummer. That was a secret, just between you and me. Now Sarah and Sally, right? But in the future, I'm going to be more clear with you about the things that I would rather you not share outside of the confidence of our relationship. Does that feel good for you? And then never leave without clearly asking for what you want. This can feel really redundant. Hey, in the future, I'm going to tell you more clearly when something is just between you and me. Like, is that okay? Is that good for you? Then never leave without asking for what you want. So just to be clear, right? What I desire is to know that it is safe for me to come to you with my deepest, darkest secrets and to know that you are not going to share them outside of the confidence of our relationship. Does that sound right? Like, clarify. Am I correct? Did you hear me? Did I say it correctly? And you heard me. You have now acknowledged that you have heard me. So in the future, you have not only just, in a healthy way, resolved conflict, but you have also put up a boundary in a very healthy way because you've created a touch point. So in the future, when your friend blabs to Sally and Sarah again, you're like, hey, remember that conversation we had? I have to put a little bit of a stricter boundary on this. Like, it doesn't feel good. You go back through rain. You say like, hey, in the future, I'm really feeling like I can't share things with you. So I'm going to ask before I share something with you, and you can then tell me if you're capable of keeping a secret. Like, you can do it in layers, right? It's like, okay, the boundary is getting a little bit like thicker now. Obviously, your BFF can't keep her mouth shut. It's like, all right, new conversation needs to be had, but you have a touch point to go back to. Like, hey, we already had this conversation. And this is something that I did not do in my marriage for a very long time. We'd have these conversations over and 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 over again. It's like, do you not remember that we talked about that? And it's like, no, probably not. But when I look my husband in the eyes and I say, hey, I really need your help with the dishes because I feel really overwhelmed with work and I'm feeling like I'm picking up all of the slack. Can you do the dishes this weekend? Saturday morning, I wake up and there's all the dishes in the sink. I can say, hey, Tuesday we had that conversation. Are you still on for doing the dishes? The boundary's already there. We've already had the conversation. I can then just look back at the touch point. I don't have to go into the whole damn thing again. I'm just like, hey, were you good for doing the dishes? Because we talked about that. And if he says no, we need to have another conversation. But if he said, oh, yeah, oops, sorry. I'm now very clearly upholding my boundary about not doing the dishes because he's going to do them. And he is respecting the fact that like we had to go back to that touch point, right? So does anyone, and this can really work for anything. It really can. I'm going to, you guys are the only two like on live with me. There's a couple people who I think are on the Facebook Live, but do you guys want an example of a time when a conversation just like turned to complete and total crap and then I had to sit through it? And what I did? If you guys are cool for another like 5 minutes, okay. Long story short, there's a lot of new things about like human design. I was coming out with all of my new stuff about human design at the beginning of this past year. Started sharing about it. I started actually charging for my human design readings. I was told by someone in a very like passive aggressive way that I was going to get my husband and I in a lot of trouble for infringing on rights of Ra, the creator of human design. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was very like explosive. It didn't feel good. And I was like, I've already looked into all of this. Like, I'm like 98% sure, like I'm good. So I double checked a couple things. I'm like, hey, no, we're all good on this part. I'm good. I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get sued. It's not happening, right? So this turned into like a whole situation where this person was mad at me. I didn't respect their concern enough. And it turned into this very big, yucky thing. And I was like, man, like I thought it had just like, I'm over here, not emotional at all. And I'm like, oh, that's over. And we show up at a event together. And I'm like, whoa, I think this person's still mad at me. What happened? I thought we were good. Apparently we're not good. So I had to have the conversation. So what I did is I went in like, hey, just like I would, like, hey, are we good? I want to make sure that like I'm clear, you're clear. I want to apologize for anything that like I did to leave you feeling like upset. And it just, it went way beyond rain and it went downhill very, very quickly. You know what I did? I didn't say a damn word. Because I was sitting there and I was like, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew in my gut that anything that I said would be a punch below the belt because I was upset, I was frustrated, I was angry at that point, and I knew that anything that I had to say would not be kind. And I wanted to leave that conversation. It was the first time that I was really like, you know what, I'm going to test this emotional authority, this emotional like intelligence thing that I've been practicing. I literally just gotten through like telling like the God, I was like, all right, this is a year that I become like the queen of communication. Uh-oh, here you go, check it out. And I sat there for like 10 minutes while my entire identity was slandered and slashed. And it was like, I can't put an edge, like anything edgewise. And it kind of just kept devolving. And it finally got to the point where I was like, I have nothing kind to say. This person's obviously angry and upset, and it probably doesn't have anything to do with me because I respect the emotional wave. This person is probably in an emotional wave and they're really upset. It has nothing to do with me. I just happen to be the person that they could like take it out on. Empathy, silence. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry that this happened. Right now, I'm going to have to put a boundary in place. Like our relationship has been severed because of this until like an apology like happens. It's just consider this the end of our relationship. You don't sit through a conversation like that and just be like, it's all good. And I stood up and I walked out of that, and my husband comes over and he's like, hey, like, how did your conversation go? Like, and I thankfully walked far enough away before I just broke down. And he was like, wait, what happened? He's like, I walked over there, like, kind of by you to check on you like a couple of times. And it seemed like your conversation was going really, really well, because I leaned in, I listened with my whole heart, even though what was being said wasn't kind. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have empathy and love, even when it doesn't feel good. And I'm not going to say anything because I know that what I have to say is not kind. And he was like, oh my gosh. I recanted what happened. And he was like, from looking at you, I would have had no idea that that was happening. And I was like, check. Okay. Silence and empathy. If things start going to trash in a conversation, one of the best things that I think that we can do is really just not say anything. We can look at the other person and we can see that that is another human being that's sitting across from us, and we don't need to make excuses or figure out why they're saying what they're saying or why they're feeling what they're feeling. I don't have to figure it all out. That's on them. And then you can kindly, if you feel like you can, put a boundary in place, or you can kindly say, you know what, it feels like this conversation is over. I think that's how I started to put a boundary. I was like, hey, I think this conversation's over. I don't have any more room for that. And then you stand up and you walk away. This can be a conversation that you come back to if it's a relationship that you want to mend or you want to dive back into. This happened to not be a relationship that I felt like very strongly about like pursuing and like fixing. And if, you know, if ever came to a point where that was an option, I definitely would. But it hasn't come to that point, and I'm completely comfortable with that. I didn't take on all of those emotions and then go process, like, why did she say those things about me? Why am I like, I'm not like that? Am I like that? Asking everyone, like, oh my gosh. I was just like, okay, like this conversation's over, boundary, love, empathy, and then you walk away. Because there's another person sitting across the table from you. And I'm going to be going into like a lot of this inside of Communication Queens and like diving into the intricacies of more so than this, the relationship, right? And like actually like being in the relationships, specific relationships. I'm just using broad examples right now, right? Versus like you and your actual partner. But this can happen, like rain works. It works over and over and over again when we are grounded in our own emotional state. I could not have come into that conversation half cocked, feeling all the feelings and been like, hey, we need to talk. Oh, that wouldn't have gone well. I probably would have raged. I would have been angry. I would have said things I regretted. And I left that conversation, and I asked my husband after, I was like, hey, this is exactly what happened. To the best of my like ability to like recant exactly what happened to you, or like recount what happened to you in that conversation. Do I need to apologize for anything? He was like, I don't think so. Like, I think you really kept your head very level. And that's the key, right? Because when we're in communication with people and tensions get high and emotions get high, our intelligence typically gets very, very low. And we start spouting off and we get angry. And then what do we have to do? We have to go back and we have to have another conversation. We have to apologize and we have to mend broken bonds. In one conversation, a relationship was over. And this was someone that I would have considered a friend, trusted. I had no idea. I did not see it coming. And in one conversation, the relationship's done. And it happens like that. And it happens in little snaps, typically. So typically not so explosive, right? One conversation and another conversation and another conversation and another conversation. And all of a sudden you have these emotional bonds that are frayed and frazzled and hanging on by a thread. And it doesn't take much for that relationship to I've watched it happen with multiple couples that are close to me. I've seen it happen over and over again in friendships all throughout college and high school. It's just like one thing after another after another. And instead of actually clearing and having a conversation from an emotionally intelligent and grounded place, we have these huge blowouts, and all of a sudden the relationship's just not even there. How do you fix something that's been bombed? A wall. So you gotta start from scratch. And at that point, it's like, I might as well just go get a new best friend. I'll find one. That is a mess. I can't even go back into that. This is such a disaster. So that's rain. And this has been the dichotomy of emotion. I'm out. I'm just kidding. I love you guys so much. Like, you guys are so awesome. Thank you for being here with me live. I'm really excited to announce going into all the way through the 12th of January, I'm going to have all my holiday specials out because I love and respect my reflectors and my emotional authorities. So anyone who needs some space or time to make decisions or who is interested, I have master classes, and you'll get this if you signed up for the master class, you'll get all the links. But if you're interested in anything, message me. I have master classes are all 50% off. And from now until January, and then readings are 20% off. And then my one-on-one coaching is, or readings are 20% off. I said that. And then coaching the first month is 20% off. And then I have Communication Queens at a special rate. Contact me though, because it's at a group rate already. And I will personally hand you that coupon code. I only have a couple. So all of my love to you guys. Happy holidays officially. I cannot believe that Thanksgiving is like basically tomorrow. So all of my love to you. Enjoy your turkey gobblers. Oh, well, except for if you're in Canada. You guys already had Thanksgiving. You have Thanksgiving again. Second Thanksgiving. And you guys have an incredible rest of your weekend. And I just always love getting to spend time with you guys. And we'll talk soon. Bye. You are welcome. Bye, bye, bye.